So ARMS is still a thing, apparently. At least Nintendo wants us to think it's still a thing. ARMS was a pretty dead game for a pretty long time. Since its release on June 16th of 2017, I didn't even have to look that up, by the way, I'm just that good. ARMS has mostly faded away. It was popular for a month or two, but pretty quickly forgotten. I don't think anyone really associates the Switch with ARMS anymore, and I would bet a lot of Switch owners didn't even know it existed. But then, out of nowhere, Nintendo does two ARMS-related things in the last Direct Mini. Why is Nintendo suddenly interested in ARMS again? Does this mean we're going to be getting a sequel to ARMS at some point? And most importantly, what does this mean for new Nintendo properties on the whole? Hello all 2,310 of you, I'm Redkwan, and will there be an ARMS 2? Believe it or not, although I don't know why you wouldn't believe it because it's not that weird, this was one of the first videos I made on my channel, and at the time I said there would not be an ARMS 2. And I also had this cool edit where I said again and again and again and replayed the same clip 3 times in a row. Pretty next level stuff. And over the past 2 or 3 years, I think that idea became more and more likely. But these new announcements might change things. And to find out if they really will change things, we'll have to figure out why Nintendo would do this in the first place. Why would Nintendo put an ARMS character in Super Smash Bros? And why would they give people a free test punch for ARMS in 2020? All this seems like an effort from Nintendo to get people interested in ARMS again. Obviously, they want ARMS to be popular and sell well, but why exactly would they make this weird push now? And I think the best explanation is that ARMS didn't do as well as Nintendo was hoping it would, and now they're giving it another shot. Either because they really believe in it and think it came out at a time when not enough people had Switches to really take off, or because they aren't sure if they believe in it, and they want to see if it didn't do well because of its promotion and release date, June 16th of 2017, or if it just wasn't something people wanted to play. In either case, at this point, it seems like Nintendo is at least open to the idea of doing an ARMS sequel, and I think in both cases the fate of ARMS 2 rests on how big of a response ARMS gets from this new push. And to be honest, I don't think this new push is going to help very much. I don't think ARMS is good enough, interesting enough, or deep enough to become a big hit, and I don't think this new push from Nintendo is really going to change any of that. To be fair, ARMS has sold about 2 million copies, and that's not terrible, but when you compare it to other games that came out from around that time, it's actually kinda pitiful. Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey have sold over 16 million copies each. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, another multiplayer game with some online elements, from just a couple months before, has sold well over 20 million copies. And Splatoon 2 from just a month later, the game that Nintendo seemed to want ARMS to follow in the path of, has sold about 10 million copies. Even 1-2 Switch has sold better. Source Wikipedia. That's not to say ARMS is a total failure, but I don't think its sales problem had much to do with its release window. Maybe it's harder to launch a new series near the beginning of a console's life, because there's not as many people to give it a shot, and if it's not from a well-known series, it's more likely to be forgotten later on. But at the same time, that's when a console has the most excitement around it, and when people are most in search of new things to play. And the people who owned the Switch at that point were probably the biggest fans of Nintendo, and the ones who'd be the most likely to give a new project like this a shot. Nintendo's marketing for all their games was really good at that point too. I really don't think ARMS' lack of success was due to anything other than the game itself, and I don't think Nintendo's efforts to make it relevant again in 2020 are gonna do that much. The problem with ARMS is that it just doesn't interest people enough to buy it. The gameplay looks a little repetitive, the stages are pretty bland, and the encouragement of motion controls probably scares some people away. There's really just not enough there. And if the early adopters of the Switch didn't go for it at the beginning of the Switch's life with all the excitement around it, I doubt it's going to take off when Springtron becomes a DLC fighter in Super Smash Bros. ARMS may receive a little bit of a boost from all this, but I don't think it's going to take off with this new opportunity by any means, and it's certainly not going to be the next Splatoon. But will it be enough for Nintendo to decide to do an ARMS sequel? It's a tough call. I'd still probably lean toward no, because I think this is something of a test for ARMS, and I don't think the results are going to impress anybody. But there is a slight chance that Nintendo's just doing this because they believe in ARMS so dang much, and they're going to keep making ARMS games and forcing ARMS characters into Super Smash Bros. Until it has to catch on. There is that chance that Nintendo still thinks ARMS can be a big series, and that this is just the first step in getting people excited for the next ARMS game. But I think it's more likely that this is Nintendo giving ARMS a last shot to be successful, and when not much happens, they'll probably decide that an ARMS 2 isn't worth doing. And that's a bit of a bummer. I mean, I really don't care that much about ARMS besides the fact that I know its release date by memory for some reason, but I think if Nintendo gives up on ARMS, they may not do as many new projects like this in the future. After Splatoon, Nintendo saw that they could make new series and still have them be successful. The original Splatoon sold like twice what ARMS has as a late Wii U game, and was one of the best-selling games on the system. ARMS was their second attempt at doing something like Splatoon, and it hasn't been nearly as successful. Hopefully Nintendo sees why ARMS didn't do as well as Splatoon, and that it was too repetitive and just wasn't deep enough or interesting enough to get most people to jump on board, but I think there's a chance that Nintendo gets more cautious with making new series in the future, now that they've seen that it doesn't always work. Hopefully they don't see Splatoon as a fluke, because I think some new Nintendo series would be great for everyone involved. They'll probably see that too, but it is a bit of a concern. So, ARMS 2. Is it happening? Why does Nintendo care about ARMS again? What does it mean for future new series from Nintendo? Well, I think Nintendo is probably doing this to give ARMS another chance to succeed, because I think there's some chance it can be successful, but I don't think the stuff they're doing is really going to help, because I don't think lack of exposure was the problem in the first place. I'd guess we're probably not getting an ARMS 2, but the fact that Nintendo cares enough to talk about ARMS at this point means that it's at least a decent possibility now. And hopefully the fact that ARMS wasn't as big of a hit as Splatoon doesn't scare Nintendo off from making new series in the future. For example, I have this really cool idea for a series about a plumber who jumps on turtles, and there could be a spin-off where they play golf. I'm telling you, this could be big. Well, I'm Redkwan. Do you think there will be a sequel to ARMS? Do you think ARMS will become popular because a character is going to be in Super Smash Bros? Isn't this a cool edit? It is. You know it is. Anyways, I'm Redkwan. Thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you all later. Goodbye.